show how proficient that the French were in cast iron construction. Skyscrapers were brand new. The first skyscrapers that just came out. Okay, they could make building before this taller than 10 or so stories. But what really made it so they could building better towers was they invented the television. Elevators were the key. Elevators, the big thing is going up was easy. It's going down and stopping it without killing the people inside. You know, it's a problem. I think you can all understand that.
Really?
It's stopping it. That is the issue.
They can figure it out.
And once they figured that part, yeah, what happens? The elevator is going down really fast. What do you do right where you land? You jump. Everyone knows that works.
Haven't we tried it?
Yeah, I think we should tell you stories. Lost a foot of height. Just we were 7 feet tall. I was 7'3". Okay, so. But everybody wanted to match this. So there was a competition. And it was more just like the US will do it, and various people, they created this Columbian exhibition. Right. Columbian means in America, because Christopher Columbus. And everybody wanted to match this. And there was a big competition. New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles was just growing. St. Louis, which would have an epic World's Fair a decade later. But Chicago was the place. Oh, there it is along the same. It's really cool. Chicago was the place, though, that happened. Why Chicago? It had grown and just $200 in just 30 years. Excuse me. It's doubled in population. There's over 1 million people. It was growing so fast. It was booming. It was the railroad center of the United States, but also very proudly the hog butcherer to the world. Because of railroads and the refrigeration, they centralized production of cattle. Chicago. And Chicago boomed. When I mean production, they would come into the stockyards there, and I mean more animals than had ever been seen in any single place ever in history would come into Chicago and would be slaughtered. And so Chicago had this just combination of this boom town, so much money being made in the shadow of these stockyards. I mean, we're talking billions of cows a day coming in. So you had this weird situation where they want to show how booming and exciting Chicago is, and you could not escape the stench. Smell of manure and death. You could not escape it. The stories of Chicago, the smell of Chicago, kind of legend. That into something else, in dry the summer, you can imagine there would be millions of tons of manure that would dry and stample. And the cattle would go over, just flush it into basically a fine powder, get into the wind, and it would be burnt. I mean, you could not escape it. So you have this weird kind of dichotomy, this booming town that's money, wealth, and growth. And then how it got the money. And so they wanted to prove they're beyond the stench. And this whole competition, a little bit of bribery, money on the table, they were going to build this kind of swampland to a little bit, get my direction line, kind of north of Chicago, hopefully be out of the wind of the stockyards, but you never escape it. The wind's right. The smell must have just been beyond comprehension. Beyond comprehension. And then they would render the fat. Let me tell you those stories. So this area was kind of a swampy area, and they turned it into just a wilderness, and they turned it into this massive exhibition with some of the most amazing architecture of that era. And it was supposed to show a combination of old traditional classic architectures with the new technology, the excitement of a new Chicago and a new United States. There's only a few of the buildings left. If you go there, it's kind of a big park now. It's really cool. There's actually a really good museum there, but they're kind of weird. They look archaic today. It's amazing how much money they spent and tore it all down. But the whole point is, what did they plan? Millions of people to come. Didn't quite get as many as they wanted, but millions would come from all over the United States. And while they're building it, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of more people coming into work And there's gonna be all these people coming into Chicago. Gee, what a great place. What a great place to prey on people. So many transits coming in, different people coming in, leaving, you don't know who's there. You don't know if someone's missing, or they just kind of started working and then moved on. Yes. So that's a bird's eye view of the great exhibition, this huge hall. This building itself would be the largest open space in the world at that time. And would be about 40 stories high of just open space. And they were literally working on it to the very moment they finished. The moment it was open. It's kind of unreal. But it's gonna have electric light, it's gonna have canals, it's gonna have these canals that run along Lake Michigan. That actually was a big deal because the sewage was dumped right into the lake. So they had to move it a little bit so it didn't dump right into the exhibition hall. Yeah, they dumped raw sewage into Lake Michigan. I want to be very clear about Lake Michigan. Before the Clean Water Act in Lake Michigan. So we're talking at 68 and 72. This part of Lake Michigan where my hand is, it's dead. It's dead, nothing lived in it. They've mostly cleaned up, it's fairly cleaned out. I wouldn't go swimming here. That used to be some of the cleanest water in the world, but it is significantly better. I should add in the last about 4 months, most of those Clean Water Act regulations have been gutted. So fortunately, we can fill Lake Michigan again. Oh, and it did catch fire. Not as much as the Monongahela River in Cleveland caught fire a number of times in the 60s. Really? Did? So back. Davy Crockett. Like he was ramming it. All right. So that was the ticket to get in. And the numbers were actually pretty low at first, and then soon it just began to pick up, and thousands would come. And the whole point is they made this massive exhibition, spent all this money, people would come. What a great place. And that was the thing. Nobody knew who was there, but they knew once they started building, which took 2 years, it's just going to be a growth and all these people coming in. That's another picture of it. They had this, yeah. Illinois. He's from Illinois. So, yeah. Good question. And then this massive statue in this middle of this canal. Oh, I forgot to mention the boats that went through the canals were electric motors, which is really new for the time. And electric lights. I guess it must have been amazing. That's why they call it the White City. Most of the buildings were painted white, but then the white lights just blew people away. Because most of the time they had gas lights. Gas light, flame, much more dangerous, but also even kind of flickering light, little yellowish, because that's the color the gas would burn. It was amazing that came out of this. Here's another picture of the Grand Canal in the middle. There's the lake in the center. You see the various exhibitions halls. There was one fire that took place, and there's a number of examples of arson. Someone burned down the British exhibition. Somebody might have been sympathetic to a free Ireland. And it did kill. They did not really prepare this very well for the case of fire. As you can imagine, they built this as quickly as possible. And just kind of going through really quick. Chicago Day, over 1 million people came through it. It must have been just unreal. There's a kind of a science and technology museum that's there now. It's pretty cool. They have various, scientific inventions, a bunch of kind of crazy toys, chicks. That little hatching area for chicks, so kids can go look at that process. And a U-boat. Okay, so Tesla also had an exhibition there. And this was the first time they tested alternating current, which would become the electricity that people use now through electric dynamos. And this, okay, they couldn't get a picture of it, but they're trying to show the lights, even though things look kind of eerie. I thought that was kind of funny. And another one, you can see a little bit of the lights, but it doesn't quite give it to. It's a lot of wasted light and it was a little bit inefficient, so it wouldn't be like, would it be today, but still had to be just amazing. But the centerpiece, they wanted to match the Eiffel Tower. So a guy by the name of George Ferris would invent the first Ferris wheel. Yeah, he was named after it, ironically. Where was that fulfilled? So clearly it's named after him. And this massive Ferris wheel went up about 80 stories. And to carry people around, you see how big these cars are? They literally took railway boxes and then cut windows in them and put them in so they could just pack people in. They said like you're a cattle going into a car, pack them in, so you go around this wheel and it would take about 45 minutes all the way around. So you go kind of slowly so you can get a chance to view. And the lines were huge. It was powered by 7 steam engines. It's really sad that that isn't there anymore. You know, they tore it down almost immediately. Well, it just kind of fell. When the thing ended, they just kind of left it. And they used it for a while, and it's like, God, you guys could have kept making money off of this thing. Even though it was pretty dangerous. This is another one. They were literally finishing it while the opening ceremonies were going on. But it turned out to be taller than as tall as the Eiffel Tower, but it was a Ferris wheel. The first one. And of course, that's going to become the rage. I like it. I think that would have been a lot of fun. But you get the idea of the size. 2,100 people have come. That's the Ferris wheel at Navy Pier, and it looks massive. I've been on that one at Navy Pier, and it looks just huge. And it's not even close. So they had, they did, but they had an example made up of the Mayflower, which is one of the ships that the Pilgrims, the Separatists, arrived at Plymouth Colony, and they had fake ships for the did a fake Spanish Armada battle and stuff like that. It was a massive affair, and there were a couple things that came out of this. For example, the first ever Cracker Jacks would be sold here. A man by the name of Kellogg, trying to come up with a healthy food, came up with the first cornflakes cereal. Basically took spoiled wheat and kind of overcooked it and popped up this kind of flake. And he thought that would be a digesting. Nobody liked it because it tasted like cardboard. So what did they add? Sugar, and all of a sudden, wow. That would become the whole thing to convince people to eat cereal. Just limited nutritional value, but that all started right here. I eat cereal every day, so I'm not saying it's bad, but it's, it's limited. And it's the first Aunt Jemima pop pancake mix will come out of here. It was the time of Jim Crow, and it was pretty racist. The actual ad, it's a little bit different now. Do you have other ones here? Oh yeah. The best-selling beer would be a beer called Pabst, and they would win the Blue Ribbon at the fair for the best beer sold, so they became known as Blue Ribbon beer. And they're all copying German beer. And in fact, that kind of made that a very popular beer, but it's ironic to try to sell it also as a tonic, so it would make you feel better. And it was a great thing to give the children if they couldn't sleep. Hey, they were selling, and I'm not kidding, they were selling hammer-proof alcohol. They put a little tweezer and squirted down babies' throat. And so if they're a little colicky, they would just doze away. And if that didn't work, you could get heroin and give them heroin. And they just sleep. Yeah, they just sleep the night away, well into the next day. No, I am not making that up. Oh, and they want to perk them up? Yes, you can buy them Dr. Pepper. And what was the doctor in Dr. Pepper? Okay, yeah. So, the first, okay, wasn't, Edison was coming up with the first movie projector, and he called it Kineoscope. At first he called it the Edison projector, and he realized he couldn't name everything after himself. Even though he didn't invent it, but they invented it in his lab, so he took the credit for it, which is the way everything is done today. And these little you could put a couple coins in and watch a movie. You'd sit down, bend down and watch, you would watch a little movie. And it was like horse races, they had little skits, a lot of slapstick stuff, people falling, things like that. And then pretty soon you can imagine how they would go into more, puerile things of various stuff. But we can't, so I've actually looked through one of these. I have one at that museum in Chicago. You turn a little crank and it just, people moving like that, but it's kind of cool. Did you see how I did that? Did you feel like you were watching?
Yeah.
Don't ask me to do it again. I'm not a circus actor. I'll only do it. Okay. And they had exhibitions from different places. Some of them were horrifically racist. For one, basically it was, sample African villages. They basically captured a bunch of people from what is now Namibia. And since they were a little shorter, they called them pygmies. And they basically, people would come and view them. Here's a typical Chinese family view, and they called it people zoos. All right, it's horrible. And we'll get to there's a German one. There's a Viking ship that the Norwegians brought. One of the first train engines came, John Bull. You get the point of this was a big deal. There's little Egypt, and this was actually a big deal because they had a dancer. She did a routine where she shook a lot and kind of she see her belly button, thus belly dancing. Yeah, that became wow. It's actually kind of humorous in a dark way, but and then they have this moving sidewalk where you could get on and kind of hop down here, back. Not to be in an airport. We're kind of going to go art building, agricultural building. I'm not going to go into every detail. It's just really kind of fascinating how big it was. The modern transportation building. Oh, here's the Idaho State building. Here's the Michigan one. I couldn't find the Montana one. I know there was one. Oh yeah, well, I did find. Yeah, that's Montana. Yeah. And we're jumping right to here. Edison and General Electric. He was trying to push direct current, like batteries, that would electrify, and he would compare it to Tesla. Here's a couple pictures from the World's Fair. I mean, this was a big, big deal. So imagine millions of people, all these people coming in, especially people like leaving the farms. As farms became more mechanized, what do you do when you have a big family on a farm? You don't have, they won't inherit the land, and you have no work for them. Go to the city, especially young girls. And they would go find a job and try to find out someplace to work here. And you're going to just imagine being thrown into this very confusing and sneaky city, like Chicago, now with over 1 million people. No place to live, don't know anybody. Today, okay, it'd be difficult today if they all of a sudden threw you guys into Chicago. Or at least we can have no places to live, we can kind of figure it out. Back then, you need someone to help. What an amazingly awful. Awful. Right on, fine, especially young women. Thus, occasions. This was a big deal, the fair. Yeah, we got the fair, that's another fire. Oh, that's what happened in the end. It finally just started falling down and they just caught fire and it's that. It's really kind of sad. They spent millions to make this thing. And that's where we get to HH. And that is a picture of the murder castle. So I got a pretty good video and I'm so glad I saved it. We'll jot down a few things about Holmes. We'll finish it tomorrow and do something. Sound good? Or maybe finish it Friday. We'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. We're going to start it right now. Son of Sam is such a good story. So I don't have captions. You're just going to have to deal with it. I'm just happy I saved it.